Most modern fantasy relies on a familiar toolkit: arbitrary magic systems, generic dragons, and spellcasting heroes. But if we look at how ancient peoples actually viewed the supernatural, the reality was much darker, and the stakes were terrifyingly real. This creates a noticeable gap on bookshelves today. Fantasy often feels completely unmoored from human history, while historical fiction usually strips away the deeply held spiritual cosmology of the eras it tries to depict. Kerman Gild spent 30 years investigating these historical intersections before writing The Stone and the Sceptre, A Scribe's Tale. It is a narrative built entirely on the back of that exhaustive research. Gild's core thesis proposes a startling connection. He traces a direct path from the burning ruins of biblical Jerusalem in the Levant, straight across the Mediterranean Sea, to the mythological foundations of Celtic Ireland. By fusing these timelines, the book creates a unique narrative space. Here, documented history, ancient theology, and epic fantasy elements blend together until you can no longer tell them apart. The story begins in a suffocating, historically precise setting: the 6th century BCE Babylonian siege of King Zedekiah's Jerusalem. The overwhelming scale of Nebuchadnezzar's encroaching army camps paints a picture of absolute, inescapable doom. We witness the collapse of the Davidic line through the eyes of the chronicler Baruch ben Neriah and the prophet Jeremiah. They serve as our grounded observers, documenting a society on the brink of total annihilation. As you can see in this excerpt from the author's notes, Gild relies on actual genealogical theories and archaeological breadcrumbs. He reconstructs the missing 30 years of the Hebrew exiles, showing how they planted the throne of David in the furthest corners of the earth. This reveals a daring escape route, pushing the survivors westward towards 6th century BCE Iberia. Using documented biblical chronology to anchor the fiction transforms the narrative into a plausible historiographical mystery. Because of this grounded approach, the universe operates under a strict cosmology. There are no spells or wands here. In this world, victories are won exclusively through absolute covenant faithfulness and divine providence. The technological edge for the refugees comes entirely from preserved ancient Hebrew knowledge. They carry alchemical compounds and metallurgical secrets that date all the way back to the reign of King Solomon. This text highlights exactly how the universe works. The characters must synthesize that Eastern wisdom with Western Celtic craftsmanship. They apply sacred principles to forge weapons uniquely capable of fighting off demonic forces. But even the finest sword or the cleverest engineering trick will fail if the wielder lacks spiritual worthiness. Human ingenuity is repeatedly shown to be useless without a direct divine blessing. Operating entirely within this biblical framework ensures the stakes are eternal. When fighting supernatural evil, deep spiritual preparation becomes the ultimate and only reliable weapon. When the refugees finally arrive in Iberia at the ancient structure of Breogan's Tower, a fascinating culture clash occurs. This initial tension slowly evolves, lowering their weapons to forge a sworn brotherhood between the Hebrew survivors and Celtic chieftains like Gathalis and Cador. They need this alliance because their adversaries are terrifying. Fomorian giant clans are mobilizing, commanded by Baelor and Sethlin the prophetess. This passage shows how the book balances massive threats with character-driven tactics. The author introduces elite infiltration teams, like Cassandra and her wolves, sniffing out hidden treasures. These instances of barely controlled chaos provide crucial levity, offering a sharp contrast to their grim mission. Integrating these epic fantasy tropes gives the narrative a highly physical, martial crucible. It's a high-stress environment designed to pressure test the characters' faith and prove them worthy of their historical destiny. This sprawling physical and spiritual journey eventually finds its geographical culmination here, at the Hill of Tara in the Emerald Isle. It is on these terraced fortifications that the refugees plant their most sacred artifact, the Stone of Destiny, firmly establishing their new Western home. Within this new stronghold, the ancient royal bloodlines become permanently intertwined. The romances between Skoda and Gathalis, and later Tia Tefi and Aukai, fuse Hebrew heritage with Celtic royalty. This convergence at Tara delivers the ultimate narrative payoff. We watch a group of desperate fleeing exiles complete their transformation into the foundational architects of an entirely new Western civilization. Kerman Gild's approach demonstrates exactly why engaging with this material matters today. By treating ancient covenants and mythology with profound historical respect, he produces a narrative far richer and more compelling than pure fiction. The core takeaway is a provocative shift in perspective, that a spiritual covenant formed the basis of Western civilization. You can follow this intersection of history and prophecy in The Stone and the Sceptre, A Scribe's Tale. It leaves you with a lingering, almost unsettling thought. You have to wonder if the myths we've all grown up with are actually the hidden history